Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Crystal Miller of Kenosha is a Republican candidate in the 65th Assembly District. The election is November 3rd. Crystal, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Kenosha's been in the news lately about the whole debate over policing reform. I've got to start there. Where do you think Kenosha goes from here in this debate over policing reform? Please.
Well, I think that we should go back a little bit and say, is there anything we could have done to avoid this? Okay. I have been, over the last decade, but particularly the last 4 years, I have had an intense interest in learning more about racial equity and why we are in the space we're in. And I think it's unusual because a lot of politicians don't want to talk about that. And particularly, we don't hear a lot of conservatives talking about it. But in understanding more about our history and how we got to this place, my eyes have certainly been opened to inequities and people that feel unheard. I can't answer the question about why Jacob Blake decided to flee the police or try to flee the police. I can't answer the question of why the police officer reacted the way that he did. But what I have learned from honestly applying myself into this space that is so uncomfortable is that we need more understanding in our society, not only of the way that people of color feel, but even how these police officers feel in the space that they're in. And so what happened on Sunday evening, August 23rd, was August 23rd? I believe it was August 23rd. What happened that evening was so tragic. And watching it as a citizen was heartbreaking. And as I approach this race, which has become a lot more relevant, I guess, in the last few weeks, I'm committed to continuing that conversation in our communities. I mean, I have been involved in our community for over a decade, working with people who are underprivileged or living in poverty, with children and vulnerable people. And understanding more about people of color and truly why we are having some of the things happen in our city and our county, it's valuable work. It's valuable work. And I am committed to continuing it to get to a better place. Now, where we go from here, it's a complicated question. And I am grateful to be a part of this journey with our city. And I'm committed to being a part of it, whether I get to go to Madison or not. People of my district decide they want me to represent them, I will listen. And I think that needs to happen as often as possible with as much respect as possible.
I just have a very quick follow-up question. There are so many different proposals floating around out there. Senator Weingart of Racine, a former police officer, has 7 or 8 bills. The governor has 9 bills that he wanted acted on in special session. Just a quick question. Is there any specific policing reform bill that you think should be enacted coming out of all that you've just been watching for the last few weeks?
No, I don't think we have enough understanding yet. I believe that these bills both have some value. And I think the fact that legislators are committed to working towards something is super valuable. But I'm not able to say, oh yeah, I'm all in for this, I'm all in for this. No, I think we need to make sure we have action that funds our police departments in a way that they can use that funding to be better. Clearly, we need to be better. We need to be better in our communities. We need our mental health professionals to be engaged in this in a really extraordinary way. I'm not saying that social workers should arrive at every 911 call, but I think that more understanding in these areas would be really valuable. And I think the police would feel so supported in that. I mean, we need to support our police departments. They've got our back, and we need to make changes if we need to make changes. And we need to prosecute bad cops as fast as we can identify them. And we need to support our systems that are valuable.
Okay. I really appreciate your answers on the events in your home community. Let's move on to some other subject. The pandemic threatens to cut state tax collections in the current year. I'm making up a number. If we don't collect the $1 billion that we'd hope to collect, and you're a member of the Assembly, would you want to cut spending, or would you look at some revenue uppers raising taxes or fees, please?
So I own a small business, and I'm in the same boat as our government will be in. I mean, less revenue, higher costs. And the things that I'm able to do in my business, I mean, it's really hard to increase revenue right now. So I guess I would hope that our government approaches it really similarly. There's places that we have money that we could spend differently. I believe that because, quite honestly, I believe it because I see it in my business. I am a recipient of government funding. I take care of older adults with mental illness, older adults with memory care issues, and about half of my revenue is from family care, which is a government contract. So I understand some waste that has happened there, and I guarantee that that's not the only place that it's happening. So for everybody to be able to tighten their belt and figure out where can we still accomplish our goals and not raise taxes, this would be a really devastating blow to our people of this state who are already struggling in this economic crisis to have taxes raised.
Well, that's all right. As a small business owner, Senator Chris Kappinga and Representative Mark Bourne are sponsoring bills that says businesses, organizations that try to comply with COVID-19 protocols cannot be sued over cannot face a COVID-related lawsuit. Is this a bill you could support?
So I was really grateful that in April, when the legislature passed the COVID relief bill, I think it was called that, COVID-19 relief, that there was an immunity in there for healthcare providers, particularly as it affected me. I don't know who all it applied to, but it protected against frivolous lawsuits related to COVID during this time. We were working our tails off to keep our people safe. And in our state, I mean, we did, in my industry, in my personal business, we did a really extraordinary job. I mean, I have about 180 residents. I've had 3 that have now recovered from COVID with that many residents. So we had a lot of fish to fry. And to be able to have those protections was super valuable. And I would support that, with the key word being frivolous. We all should continue doing the right thing and holding our integrity no matter what, even on hard days. But I know that even plaintiffs' attorneys for that bill particularly were in support of it because of there was some reasonableness in that bill. I haven't looked at this other bill that's coming up. I haven't looked at it. I don't know about it, but my experience says that there's some value there.
The role that hospitals have been playing in Wisconsin and nationally to treat COVID-19 patients. If you're in the legislature voting on the next state budget, do hospitals deserve an even greater priority than they might have in the current budget?
Hospitals always need to be a priority. They really do, especially attracting and training the right people. It's hard work. The industry that I'm in, assisted living, I mean, I'm dealing with frontline workers, and it is extraordinarily hard work. The funding, I sound like a broken record, is never enough for my industry, and I've worked hard to help, especially Republicans, understand why it's valuable to do funding for healthcare. But as it relates to hospitals, I mean, we need them to feel supported. I mean, a hospital is a business, and it has to be able to stay in business. We need them desperately. So as appropriate, we certainly need to be continuing to support our hospital systems.
On September 28th, the governor faces a decision. Should he continue the statewide mask edict, or should he let it die and drop? Do you have a position on that?
Well, I'm grateful for masks. I think that they have kept people safe. I have a special perspective on that because of what I do. And I know that it has made a big difference in keeping my residents and my caregivers safe. I believe that mask mandate is something that I would like to stay at a local level. I think that, our entire state should not affected the same. And that's why local government and local health departments, and even just people like me, being able to say, let's do the right thing. I find value in that.
As states like Illinois legalize recreational and medical marijuana, what's your position on that?
I've had several people ask me about that, and It was my goal to dig in and really truly understand more about that. As you can imagine, the last month in Kenosha has not had time for a lot of extra. But in my short conversations that I've had, I see value in understanding more, and I certainly would not take it off the table. I know that there are, especially, well, I just know from a parent's point of view, there are a lot of parents who say, my child can live a life that is meaningful and valuable more if they have opportunity for this. I'm not going to state a position on it. I don't know enough yet, but I certainly would not take that off the table and would not immediately oppose something like that.
New subject. The governor would like a People's Maps Commission to draw the next set of congressional and legislative district lines. Your position on that?
So as I've learned more about that, and honestly, I'm in a district that it's very hard to find some of my voters because of the very jagged lines. And as I've learned more, it seems like a lot of it is even the way the city is drawn and annexed. It's a complicated issue. And I think the way that the Constitution provides for us right now, there is a balance of power. For our legislator to be able to propose something, the governor have input is valuable. I would likely support it to stay the same, but I, as a person who would have a seat at the table, will support lines that make more sense. Let's say that.
Okay.
I support fair maps. I just think we can get there in a way that is similar to what we're doing right now.
Thank you. Wisconsin property taxes are high, which is why school districts, local governments have been living with caps and limits on what they can levy on property taxes for more than 20 years. Do you think those caps and limits should continue to protect property taxes paid by homeowners?
Similar to what I said before, now is not the time to raise taxes. I can't imagine people coming in right now in the economic crisis and the way that middle income or any income families feel right now. And to raise property taxes would be extraordinarily unfortunate and potentially even demoralizing. It's the way that many people in our community feel right now. So I wouldn't support that. And as I learn more about it, I certainly, I don't know enough about that. I'd like to dig in on it.
Okay. Does that also go for giving local governments alternative sources of revenue so they wouldn't be so reliant on property taxes? Have you had a chance to study like the bill of Representative Goyke in Milwaukee, which says if Milwaukee voters pass a referendum, they could levy a 50-cent sales tax? Is it time to give local governments revenue options?
I like local control. I also believe that sales tax often really penalizes lower income people. And I think that that is something that needs to be considered so carefully, because putting a sales tax on something honestly might put disadvantaged people at an even more disadvantage. And I wouldn't be in support of that. And I know that might sound like a wishy-washy answer, but I think there's value there. And let's talking about this. Sales tax might be valuable for some places, but when it has a disproportionate effect on people who are already so much in hurt, no, it doesn't make sense.
The governor last year recommended raising our gas tax. Our gas tax now is 30.9 cents per gallon to stabilize funding of highways and bridges. Could you vote to raise the gas tax?
I don't want to raise any taxes right now. Like I said, I think 3 or 4 times now. I think It's a really bad year to say, let's figure out how to raise taxes on our people. It seems a little bit tone deaf to even to bring that up. Now, we're going to still have to pay our bills. We have to pay the bills. So we have to figure out a way. So let's figure out a way without raising taxes, if at all possible. And good grief. I mean, I'm running for this assembly seat. I'm not a politician. I haven't probably even spent enough time learning about some of these things because I have just put my nose down to build a business that allows me to run. So what I know is how to run a business. And I know that what I've seen in my business certainly gave me the passion to run because of the legislative issues that I've gone to Madison to work hard on. And the influence that I have in those Republicans' offices gives me so much hope that my voice will be valuable in the same offices with potentially a different perspective. I mean, I am from Kenosha and I love the people here. And this has been democratically ran by everybody for many, many years. This is a fresh approach. And Kenosha needs me desperately to be the voice in the room.
Just two more questions. If a school board or a local government plans a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to a Wisconsin business? Crystal?
I love Wisconsin and I love local business. So I think that makes sense to me. Do I think that there should be a mandate they only choose a Wisconsin business? No. I mean, that wouldn't make sense. But absolutely, if a Wisconsin business comes and says, here, I want you to consider my proposal, they should be on that list. No different than if my best team member says, hey, my sister wants to work here. She's going to get an interview because I trust them and she's connected in some way. And that's how I would approach that.
Then last question. Do you want to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 3?
So I have lived in Kenosha for 23 years, long time. I think I can finally call myself a Kenoshan. I run a small business. I have children who are in our public education system. You know, my opponent is much older than me. He worked for Chrysler for many years. He represented our union. We have a different perspective and we have appealed to different people, but I have seen some of the laws that get passed, I see how they work. Being on the ground and actually seeing my caregivers, my team members, our workforce, how they're affected by policy that's passed. This perspective is so valuable and so needed. My opponent has been in for 8 years. Kenosha is in a mess right now. Now he's promising to double down. Now's not the time to double down. 8 years ago might have been the time to make change happen. So I believe that Kenosha is going to elect me because they want to see change, and I'm one piece of this big puzzle.
Thank you. Crystal Miller of Kenosha is a Republican candidate in the 65th Assembly District. The election is November 3. Crystal, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care. Stay safe. Have a good day.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.